To you, our candidate in Clare and chairman of the Irish Freedom Party, Bill the Boss, for Michael Leahy.
Thank you very much. For the Irish Freedom Party, the protection of free speech is our absolutely non-negotiable core value. It is probably the main reason we came into existence. But it now seems we are coming to the end game of a process that this party has warned about for the past 4 years. If this bill is passed, it marks the end of our democracy, the end of Ireland as a sovereign nation, the overthrow of the rule of law and the enslavement of the Irish people. We cannot and we will not let that happen. Speech must be regarded as the primary liberty, because without free speech no other freedom can be defended or vindicated. This has been recognised since ancient times, that without free speech... They're right, okay.
They're cutting us off!
Sorry folks, can you still hear me? Okay, sorry about that. We'll see if we can get the generator going again. It's new equipment, so we're finding our way. Without free speech you can have no democracy, you can have no politics. We've got to ask two questions about this bill now. Why is it Ireland and why is it now? Why now? Our government needs us to be silent because it does not want us questioning the policy of mass immigration and replacement of the Irish population. It does not want us questioning the paedophile story time and the corruption of our children in our primary by homosexual pornography in our primary schools. It does not want us questioning the damage that they inflicted on us and on our relatives during the lockdown, and the damage they propose to inflict on us with their nonsensical climate policies. Why is it happening in Ireland? Why are we the country to introduce an anti-free speech regime which has shocked commentators throughout the world? And one thing I can say to you is the one thing the Irish government may respond to. Contact US House of Representatives if you know them, and you know, we all know people in the United States, we all know people in Britain. Get them to protest against this government for what they're doing. Because if this law is passed here, it will spread like a cancer to other democratic societies, and we have to stop that happening. Why is it that over the past 20 to 30 years, Ireland is always the most extreme country in its attacks against property and free speech, in the politicising of its judiciary, and its attacks against the family and against Christian belief? Perhaps because being a small island country, it is easier to corrupt our unscrupulous establishment and to gag our media. Perhaps because Ireland is a test case of what is going to be done elsewhere. However, I have a word of warning to those who would destroy liberty in Ireland, and that is that they would do well to look to the lessons of Irish history. We fought worse tyrants than these bullies before, and we chased them out of our country. We are well capable of doing the same thing again, and those in our government, dominated by people with no loyalty whatsoever to this country, would do well to remember that. If we do not have free speech, we cannot describe ourselves as a free society. Our freedom can't be taken for granted. It was hard won, and we have a duty to fight hard to retain it. Testing tower back.
For a few weeks. Thanks, guys. That's a bit better. If we allow a gang of unscrupulous elites to determine what we can and cannot say in public and even in private, then the great struggle for Irish freedom and Irish independence, whose 100th anniversary they tried so hard to ignore last year, will have been in vain. We must let governments, both national and European, know that the Irish people will never let that happen. Previous Irish generations showed their mettle in fighting tyranny, and we can take example from them. It is now up to us to show that the Irish spirit, the Irish commitment to liberty is still alive and will never be extinguished, save in the words of Patrick Pearse, by the extinction of the Irish people. And we saw a bit of that spirit last night in Pearse Street. That's what we need in every town that comes up and down this country. This legislation has been introduced at the behest of a gang of black-shirted fascists and activists who regularly bring their violence onto our streets. Supported by all of our major parties, it has all the classic hallmarks of totalitarian law, in that it is deliberately vague, it is all-encompassing, and it intrudes into the innermost part of our private lives. Most dreadfully, it shifts the burden of proof from the accuser to the accused, so that you, the citizen, now have to prove your innocence. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is safe from this legislation, and that is its intent. Any parent who seeks to protect their children from the sexual predators who now manipulate our government, anyone who objects to their neighbourhood being taken over by unvetted immigrants, anyone who objects to the madness being taught in our schools, all have the potential to be arrested, massively fined, or imprisoned under this legislation. When I tell that to people, they simply don't believe me. Go and look at the legislation. Look at what our Dáil is proposing against its own people. We got to wake up to the fact they hate our guts. And if we want to fight hate, the first place we should start is with this hateful government. The Burkes, with all their faults, have been the canary in the coal mine, and the way they have been treated by our state is a salutary warning for what may be in store for the rest of us. We must also question the role of the European Union in this matter. When I see Mark Rutte, the Dutch Prime Minister, who has attacked his own farmers, demanding the expulsion of Hungary because it dares to try to protect itself from the promotion of homosexuality to children, and when he says that this is an indication that Hungary does not subscribe to European values, I can only say that if European values involve the predatory sexualization of children, then it is time that those European values were swept back into the gutter where they belong. For the first time in our history, this legislation introduces the twin concepts of hate crime and hate speech. Does anybody think, as I do, that when you start using those terms in the context of legislation, that it brings us directly to the horrible world of George Orwell's 1984? Many people in our government seem to think that 1984 is not a warning, it's an operation manual, and they're now putting it into place. Orwell warned us that when an idea can no longer be spoken or expressed, it very quickly becomes an idea which can no longer even be thought. So we are not here just to defend free speech. We are here to defend free thought and defend our rights and dignities as human beings. I am here to say we will never let them take our dignity without a fight of the most determined and bitter kind. And if they want to fight, they can have it. This legislation is of a piece with much of the other legislation that we see coming at us day by day. What we are seeing is the beginning of an unprecedented surveillance and control system into which the lives of all of us will be tied, including health records, banking and credit. It has all the hallmarks of being the precursor of the horrible Chinese Communist Party social credit system. And if we do not stop it now, it has the potential to enslave us for generations to come. When government tries to introduce a modern technocratic system of slavery, we must say to them that our forebears fought for 300 years to end slavery, and we will not allow them to bring it in by the back door again. From the point of view of natural justice, this legislation has at least two elements that should fill us all with dread. It defines hate crime as any crime which is perceived by the receiving party as having been motivated by hate. Just think about that for a moment. Such a perception is purely subjective and can have no place in any just law. What burden of proof will be required other than somebody's feelings? This is clearly a blackmailer's charter and a liar's license. In addition, it introduces a two-tier system of law with a very restricted group of designated victim classes being empowered to use legislation to attack and suppress the free speech rights of the majority population. I needn't tell you that this legislation is not going to be dealt with in an even-handed fashion. Do you seriously think that they're going to use this against Islam? Do you seriously think they're going to use it against the criminal elements that they're bringing into this country? This legislation is aimed at you, it's aimed at keeping you silent, it is aimed at attacking your rights. It will be imposed in a racist way against Irish people, and that's why it has to be stopped. It concentrates on three main victim classes relating to race, gender, sexuality and religion. Can we really believe that the elaborate sexual identification and gender politics contained in this law is anything other than an indirect means of attacking religious freedom? Is it not also a means of attacking the identity of human beings themselves? And a foreign president once commented about the West that they now seem to be attacking what it is to be a man or a woman, and that's why the West is in such serious decline. The person who made that comment was President Putin. And I can tell you, when he's looking down on us and when he's regarding what we're doing as totalitarian, we've got a serious problem. We must also question what impact this legislation will have on the role of An Garda Síochána in our society. An Garda Síochána are going to be put in a situation of prosecuting people, not for criminal acts, but for holding the wrong opinions. We must question whether the Guards will be forced to become the political arm of an emergent police state. And if you want a taste of what that might be like, then think of the lockdown on steroids. I would say to the Garda Síochána, are you happy to be asked to be a new Stasi in Ireland? Are you happy to break into people's houses and seize their computers and question them about their opinions? Because that's what you're going to be faced with. We need An Garda Síochána to be just that, the guardians of the peace, and not the enforcers of an intolerant, racist and sexist moral code of political correctness. 2 years ago, speaking from these steps and referring to the attack against our constitution under the lockdown, I said that we still had a chance that the higher courts would vindicate our rights and call the government to its senses. I fear, sadly, that my faith in the courts may have been mistaken. The courts had adequate opportunity to protect the people's rights during the lockdown, and they refused to do so. We need to know now, do we have a constitution or do we not have a constitution? Will the courts vindicate our rights, or will they accept that there is no such thing as a right to freedom if that is what the government tells them to do? Because if that's what the courts are saying, then we don't have a constitution and we need a new constitutional architecture. Much of our present higher judiciary have been put in place by Fine Gael. It's important to realise that Fine Gael are every...
Fine Gael are every bit as much of a threat to the stability of our democracy as are the traitors, the globalist traitors of Sinn Féin, or the madmen and madwomen of the Green Party. The judges they have been appointed have been put there to ignore the human rights provisions of the Constitution and to enable the government to do whatever it wants. Repeatedly, the courts have ignored the concept of imprescriptible rights and of natural law. If the courts will not vindicate us, if the courts will not stand up for the liberties of the Irish people, established through 300 years of sacrifice and struggle and blood and suffering, then the courts are not fit for purpose. They must be swept aside and replaced with a new system that will protect us. This may seem like fighting talk, but perhaps it is the time for fighting. The reality is that it is the people and the nation which will be swept aside if we do not make a stand now. The worst thing we can do is to allow ourselves to become demoralised. The undermining of our society, the taking away of our history and culture, the corruption of public morality and the apparent powerlessness of ordinary people is a carefully planned process of demoralisation which has been going on now for some decades, not just in Ireland but throughout the Western world, with the rotten, dishonest European Union at its core. We need to be active and on the streets. We need more of the Pearse Street spirit. We need to have mass meetings such as these in every town in the country and every day and night of the week. We want to let those in power know that we are a free people and that we will remain a free people and that we are a great historic nation and that we will not allow this nation to perish. We need to say to those who seek to destroy us, we are coming. It is not you who will destroy us, but it is we, the people, that will destroy you. We are coming to demand justice for Ireland. We are coming, and there is no power on earth that will stop a unified and risen people when it is awakened. I know that at times it can seem that we face insurmountable odds. You will hear nothing about this rally in our newspapers tomorrow, and you will hear nothing about it in our Mockingbird state television. But I can tell you who will notice it. The elected representatives who will begin to realise that their jobs are on the line. They will notice it, and for that reason, we must continue to be active and to make noise. You know, as I spoke at the last time I was here, and whenever I speak to a meeting, I always look at what date it is, what the anniversary was. Last time, it was the anniversary of the death of General Michael Collins. Today is the 13th of May, and I looked at my diary. Today is the anniversary of the first apparition at Fatima. You know, I think there may be a message there somewhere, because we need prayer. We are faced with an unaccountable evil when we look at the faces of our government. And we can be as active as we want, but we also need to get on our knees and pray for the help of Almighty God. I conclude by thanking you for coming out in such great and enthusiastic numbers today. And I ask you to continue to stand by our country, to stand by our nation, to stand by the Irish Republic, and to stand by God Almighty for the rights and liberties of the Irish people.